We're at the Pigeon River, getting ready to start our hike, 72 miles through the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. We didn't know as we were walking through, but this whole area would be completely flooded out in a couple of days. It shut I-40 down in both directions and damaged the Standing Bear Hostel. We got pretty lucky because this incident shut the whole AT down for a 10-mile section, and we were just barely ahead of it. Anyway, back to our trip. For the first night, we stayed at the famous Davenport Gap shelter. This is the one that has the caging on the front of it to keep bears out. The Great Smoky Mountains National Park requires that you stay inside the shelters. You can't tent camp. And after hiking hundreds of miles on the AT, we've actually never stayed in the shelters, so this was a new experience for us. And to be honest with you, I think there's a lot of benefits to staying in the shelters, and I'm glad that we did. The main two advantages are not having to set your tent up in the rain if it's raining, and in the morning it's really easy to pack everything up and head out. Potential downsides, you can't control who sleeps in the shelter with you, and mice and snakes. Speaking of snakes, we were really careful to give this guy plenty of room. It's a copperhead, by the way. We saw some other wildlife, like a wild turkey, an elk. We also had a bear encounter. I'll share that story in a minute. There is a plane crash site in the park. It was from a 1984 U.S. Air Force plane that crashed into the mountain at 450 miles per hour. For night 2, we arrived at the Tri-Corner Knob shelter. The next shelter southbound of here was the Peck's Corner shelter, and that's where they had a negative bear encounter just a few days earlier. A bear actually came into the shelter, grabbed a guy's pack, and took off into the woods. Well, the bear came back about an hour later. They sprayed it with bear spray, and it still hung around for 30 minutes before finally leaving. Needless to say, we were being very vigilant with our food storage. Everyone was talking about these incidents on the trail, and it seemed like everyone had seen some bears. The park had even closed down 3 shelters due to aggressive bear activity. We actually had to bypass the ice water shelter because it was closed because of bear activity. So the story here was that a bear actually clawed into someone's tent. I don't think they were inside at the time, but it did pop their thermarest. So our encounter with a black bear that day went exactly as you'd want it to. We were hiking down the trail, and all of a sudden, about 100 feet in front of us, we see a big, probably 500-600 pound black bear. So I said, "Hey bear," a couple of times, just so it would know we were there. Bear. It took a look at us for a moment, then it scurried up the hill where it watched us for a little bit longer. This bear definitely showed its natural curiosity of humans, but it also showed its fear of humans, which is exactly what you want to see. Because the shelter that we were supposed to stay at was closed, we had to meet a shuttle driver at the only road that goes through the park. He took us down to the Smokemont campground where we stayed the night. Then he picked us back up first thing in the morning to take us back to the trail. That's when we started our climb up to Kuwowie, aka Klingman's Dome, and this is really when the trip started to turn a lot more rainy. I was alternating between my umbrella and my poncho, and in the end, I think with cooler weather like it was here in the 60s, the poncho worked much better. We had lunch at the Kuwowie Observation Tower, then we went on to our shelter, Seiler's Bald. Now earlier I was saying the downside of the shelters is you can't pick who stays in the shelter with you, but we were really lucky to share the shelters with some really cool and interesting people. We weren't as lucky with mice, unfortunately. As soon as it turned dark, I did see a few of them walking around, and they were very bold and seemingly unafraid. The rain was so heavy on Thursday morning that it felt like we were hiking on the Appalachian Creek instead of the Appalachian Trail. It finally started drying off in the afternoon. We passed the Hazel Creek Trail where my dad and I have done a fishing/backpacking trip years ago. We stayed at the Russell Field Shelter for our final night on the trail. We got an early start the next day. We stopped at the Shuckstack Fire Tower, which had an awesome view. It's definitely not for people that are afraid of heights. We had an awesome 360-degree view. We could even see all the way down to Fontana Dam where our cars were. All right, so we made it through 75 miles straight through the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. Thanks for following along on our journey, and we'll see you next time.